Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today, we discuss a mysterious bottomless hole in the ground some say has supernatural powers or is a portal to an alternate reality. On February 21, 1997, Mel Waters called into Coast to Coast AM with Art Bell, a popular show for conspiracy theories and the paranormal that was the largest of its kind at the time. It was the ideal setting for Waters to deliver his narrative. He enthralled Bell and the listeners with stories about a seemingly bottomless hole on his land that possessed mystical characteristics, with some locals even referring to it as the Devil's Hole. Waters hesitated to provide a specific location, only saying he lived in Kittitas County, Washington, near the Manassas Ridge. His tales became considerably more dramatic in two follow-up conversations, in April 2000 and January 2002. At the time, there was no way of knowing that Mel's Hole would continue to draw public attention for years to come. The first facts from Mel Waters detail a strange pit with unknown origins on his property in Ellensburg, Washington. Waters characterized the hole as bottomless, frightening wildlife in the area so much that birds never flew over it. Dogs whined and refused to go near it, and curious neighbors frequently threw garbage into it, never hearing anything reach the bottom. The letter was written as follows. Dear Art, I'm writing to see if you or your enormous listening audience can assist me. I reside in rural eastern Washington on the Manassas Ridge. On our property there is a hole. We have been throwing our trash into the hole like the previous owners and the owners before them. The hole has been there for as long as anyone can remember. I initially thought it was an ancient well. The hole is 9 feet, 9 inches in diameter, with a stone retaining wall surrounding it and a steel door on top to keep anyone from falling into it. As I previously stated, people have been throwing their trash into the well for decades. You name it, furniture, domestic waste, dead cows, construction debris. The problem is that the hole never filled up. So I became fascinated, even obsessed, and began attempting to gauge the depth of the hole. I emptied 3 fishing reels with around 1,500 yards of monofilament to establish the depth. I soon found myself buying fishing lines in bulk. I've sunk around 80,000 feet of line into the hole without reaching the bottom. My wife works at a nearby university's geology department, and we're hoping to acquire some expert scholarly assistance in calculating the hole depth. Except for 2 minor things, I see nothing unusual about it. Dogs will not come within 100 feet of the hole, and birds will not sit on the retaining wall or metal door. Another oddity is no echo when you yell into the pit. I've never heard anything hit the bottom when thrown in. We once threw in an old refrigerator and never heard it hit the bottom. There was no bang, splash, or crunch. I'm hoping your listeners can offer some explanations. Based on my measurements thus far, I wonder if this is the most bottomless pit on the planet. Soon after, Art Bell invited Mel to appear on his radio show, where he introduced the world to Mel's Hole, one of the most famous mysteries of the 21st century. Mel told Bell over the phone from Ellensburg, Washington, about 80 miles from his property, that he bought the Manassas property a few years ago, that the hole had always been there, and that everyone in the area, including the neighbors, knew about it and would regularly dump garbage in it. People often threw in broken heavy machinery, rubbish, rocks, and in one case, even a dead dog. For some reason, a hunter threw it into the hole instead of burying the deceased animal. A few days later, he said the dog was out walking through the woods alive again, recognized by wearing the same collar. When he tried to call the dog by his name, he didn't acknowledge the owner and scurried off into the woods, like something out of Stephen King's Pet Sematary. Mel's Hole was more than a hole. It was a round well-like pit, a little more than 9 feet across, with a stone retaining wall on the sides and extending down a few feet before falling to the soil. Mel tried to measure the depth and became extra curious after dropping heavy tools in the hole and never hearing a sound, so he decided to do another test. Mel figured the pit might be filled with mud or clay, explaining the lack of sounds or echoes, so he tied a couple of Lifesavers candies to the end of a fishing line and lowered it into the hole. Mel's line finished after 1,500 feet, and he drew up the fishing line. The candy was full. Next, Mel bought several spools of fishing line, tied a lead weight to it, and slowly lowered the cable into the hole. Spool after spool after spool into the hole, but nothing happened. Mel noticed the hole had no end after 80,000 feet of fishing line, or 15 miles, had been inserted and had to seek Art for assistance, because this was now beyond his abilities to measure. After dismissing the idea of sending a volunteering listener down into the hole for liability reasons, Mel admitted that if diagnosed with a life-threatening illness, he would jump into the pit because he believed the pit possessed unknown powers that could probably rejuvenate him. The calls continued into the night, with people calling in to explain this strange occurrence. Mel's hole was the night's topic, becoming a coast-to-coast favorite for years. In a follow-up fax to the radio show 4 days later, Mel notified Art that he had returned home to his property precisely a day after the broadcast. When he returned, he saw that the driveway to his house was blocked by armed military troops, who barred him from entering. They hilariously claimed a plane had crashed on his land and were investigating it, but Mel hadn't seen any smoke or debris near the site, only men in yellow gear, most likely hazmat suits, moving around the land. When Mel asked to speak to someone in charge, they told him the same absurd story. They then quietly intimidated him, hinting that the land was not definitely Mel's property, and that if he persisted, they could easily find a drug lab on it. Mel, enraged, threatened to go to the press if they didn't back down, but the uniformed man sneered and taunted him, stating that no one would believe him anyhow. Here's when things get strange. He claimed at some point to have seen a beam of solid black light coming out of the hole, similar to a searchlight, that burst into the sky and looked to have no end engulfing the light around it. Art Bell quickly invited Mel to a second call on the show, asking whether there had been any fresh developments on the military matter. Mel also told Bell that his real estate agent contacted him with a big offer, indicating that someone was interested in buying the home even though it wasn't for sale. How coincidental all this was. Mel also revealed that an old man in the area had told him that the pit formerly had stone columns around it, similar to Stonehenge, if you can believe that. Is it possible that the hole is far older than everyone imagined? Could it have existed since the beginning of time and remained primarily hidden all these years? In 1989, a caller from the same location said that his college professor had also described a gigantic bottomless pit as part of local mythology, and another caller remarked that Mel's home is adjacent to the Yakima Training Center, a government facility, explaining the quick military intervention. Unbeknownst to Mel, the callers warned him to be cautious because the area was notorious for UFO sightings and other weird phenomena, and they were interested in Mel's narrative and safety. They had no idea he wouldn't be heard from again for the following 3 years. Art Bell eventually tracked him down and brought him back onto the show in 2002, just when he seemed to have vanished from the face of the earth. He made Mel recount his narrative about the hole, checking to see if he remembered the details, which he did, along with a wild revelation. He even offered $250,000 a month for a perpetual lease on the site. Contingent, he never mentions the pit or his experiences with it again and relocates out of the country. Mel, who had never had this sort of riches before, took the money and moved to Australia. When Art Bell asked why he never appeared on the show again or contacted from Australia, Mel told a horrifying story reminiscent of a Hollywood movie. When he was scheduled to appear on the show in December 1999, he attempted to assist his nephew in moving into an apartment in the Olympia, Washington region. Mel had to get a bus back to Olympia after returning the moving truck to Tacoma, and that's when his memory ended after an altercation on the bus. Mel awoke 2 weeks later in a grimy alley somewhere in San Francisco, his personal effects missing and an IV tape on his arm. His molars had also been removed while he was knocked out. In desperation, Mel reached out to his nephew, who got him a ticket back to Olympia. A few days after his arrival, Mel discovers that his now ex-wife, the legal owner of the property, is suing him for violating the terms of his original lease, which included the construction of an underground fuel system, a septic tank, and paved roads, even though Mel did not build any of these. He concluded that they were following him because he returned to help his nephew in breach of his original agreement never to return, and was treated in this manner as a warning. Mel's story becomes even stranger when he realizes his specialty belt buckle is missing after waking up in the San Francisco alley. Mel had created 10 buckles made out of a bent fork, stones, and coins found around the location, and he had fused them with 10 Roosevelt dimes he found in an obscure red Chinese lucky money envelope. Mel was curious about why they removed his belt buckle, so he tracked down one of the individuals he had sold his personalized belt to. While inspecting the coins in the belt, Mel discovered that the dime was created in 1943, even though no dimes featured Roosevelt's face in 1943. Furthermore, each American coin includes a letter designating the country in which it was made. This dime began with the letter B, even though no city in the history of U.S. currency minting had ever begun with the letter B. It was unique, and they submitted it to a coin specialist to be valued. However, the expert stated a few days later that the Treasury Department had confiscated his currency. Richard C. Hoagland, a hyperdimensional physicist, theorist, and well-known alien researcher, later proposed that the coins came from a parallel universe. Does the fact that these coins discovered near Mel's hole came from another parallel reality imply that the hole is some interdimensional portal? And if so, are there more bottomless holes on the Earth that work similarly? Amid the story's success, a group of Native Americans in Nevada heard Mel on the program and invited him to their reservation to examine a curious hole that dated back to the 1800s, all the way back to an old region in Nevada settled by the Basque people. The Basques are a small and primarily isolated ethnic group from a small section of Europe who raise sheep and consider the land hallowed ground. This hole was 9 feet wide, like Mel's, but it had a metal collar and notches on the top. The metal was warm to the touch and made no noise when touched, and animals dreaded it, as birds, dogs, and rodents would not go near it. Just like Mel's hole, so he and the villagers decided to put the hole through many tests. This hole, like Mel's hole, appeared to have no bottom, and they pondered what would happen if a living animal went into its depths. So they decided to lower an unfortunate sheep into the pit. The poor sheep went insane before it was lowered down, struggling and fighting to stay above before being knocked unconscious and lowered into the hole. The sheep awoke halfway through and let out a frightening scream. It went on for a while, then came to a halt when the villagers hastily recovered the sheep, recognizing that it had died from either a fear-induced heart attack caused by the terror or something more sinister or paranormal in the hole. Some even rumored that the sheep had unidentified hieroglyphic-type writing or stamping on it when it was pulled back up, but this cannot be corroborated. Over the years, various theories have been proposed to explain the hole's mysteries, the earliest of which was volcanic caverns, which can develop where volcanic materials are exposed. They are formed by flowing lava near the land surface and are easily destroyed by erosion. Lava tubes are the most extensive and complex form of volcanic caves, formed from the courses of lava rivers that formerly flowed downslope from a volcanic vent or fissure. Lava tubes form best in highly fluid lava, primarily basalt rock. The state of Washington sits on a highly active volcanic hotspot, and Mel's hole could be a particularly robust lava tube, constructed thousands of years ago. But that doesn't explain the hole's other weird happenings. The following assumption was that the whole affair was a covered government project. The fact that the pit was near the Yakima Training Center added credence to the claim. But why would the government allow civilians to discover and utilize the hole as a garbage and waste receptacle for many years? I don't think they knew its existence until hearing Mel's radio story. Mel Waters made his final appearance on Coast to Coast AM on December 20, 2002. He told Art Bell the most shocking story of the entire expedition. The Native Americans near the second hole were communicating with some interdimensional creature. They'd used the hole for communication, and the creature described itself as capable of traveling through worlds and issued a dire warning to humanity. The creature warned humans not to use the power of these two mysterious holes for military purposes, saying that if we did, we would destroy ourselves, and that other beings on other planets were waiting for our destruction so they could come in and resettle our planet. Nothing more was heard about Mel Waters after this strange and shocking broadcast. He didn't sell books or appear on television shows or in the media. He vanished and was never seen or heard from again. Mel's hole's exact location, as was its purpose, was likewise unknown. Was it a top-secret military experiment or a time travel gateway? Or was it a portal to another dimension, similar to quantum wormholes? Mel's inability to provide photographic evidence adds to the mystery surrounding this phenomenon, leading many people to believe it is all a scam or dismissed in the same category as eerie bedtime stories parents tell their children to get them to fall asleep. Tell us your thoughts in the comments section below. We'd love your views on this intriguing X-Files style narrative. As always, thank you for watching. Please like this video and subscribe to our channel using the notification button to be notified when we upload our next video.